Sign this resignation letter, or we'll terminate you immediately. Those were the exact words that echoed through that sterile conference room. After 21 years of unwavering dedication, I had exactly 30 minutes to make a decision that would alter everything. I chose to resign, but on my own terms. I crafted my resignation letter with surgical precision, choosing every single word with deliberate care. 5 days later, their corporate attorney rang my phone at 7:43 in the morning, his voice trembling with barely concealed panic. "Ms. Richardson, we urgently need to discuss the specific wording in your resignation letter." Marcus Bennett, the chief financial officer, went absolutely silent when I calmly explained what my carefully chosen words actually meant under contract law. But let me take you back to where this all started. Let me walk you through exactly how I found myself in that suffocating conference room at 4:17 p.m. on a Friday afternoon in October 2025, watching four smug executives suddenly realize they'd just made a catastrophic miscalculation, one that would cost them absolutely everything they thought they'd cleverly gained. My name is Jennifer Richardson, and I'm 46 years old. For 21 years, I served as Senior Director of Global Operations at Summit Technologies, a prestigious software development firm headquartered in Seattle, Washington. We specialized in enterprise resource planning solutions for manufacturing companies nationwide. I started back in July 2004 as a junior operations analyst, fresh out of graduate school with my MBA from the University of Washington. My starting salary was $42,000 annually, and I lived in a cramped studio apartment that devoured more than half my monthly paycheck. By October 2025, my annual compensation had climbed to $192,000, plus substantial quarterly bonuses, comprehensive benefits, and stock options I'd carefully accumulated over 2 decades of service. I managed a department of 41 talented professionals scattered across 3 continents. My division alone generated $63 million in annual revenue. I wasn't just another employee with an impressive title printed on business cards. I was the living, breathing institutional memory that kept Summit Technologies running smoothly. When our chief operating officer couldn't recall critical details about a major client relationship that dated back years, my phone would ring. When the finance department desperately needed historical data from 2007 that existed nowhere in our current digital systems, they'd come straight to me. When board members demanded explanations for why certain complex processes existed the way they did, I provided those answers with documentation to back everything up. My email archives stretched back the full 21 years, meticulously organized by project, client, and subject matter. I maintained vendor relationships that predated most of our current staff members' employment. I understood intricate contract negotiations that occurred before half our management team had even graduated from college. For 21 years, I was absolutely indispensable, a cornerstone of the organization's foundation. Until suddenly I wasn't. The problems began 8 months before that fateful October confrontation. In February 2025, Summit Technologies was acquired by Empire Corporate Holdings, a massive conglomerate valued at $114 billion. They specialized in systematically purchasing medium-sized technology companies, ruthlessly eliminating expensive, experienced employees, and replacing them with fresh college graduates who'd accept significantly lower compensation without asking uncomfortable questions. I'd witnessed this exact destructive pattern obliterate 3 competing companies in our industry over the preceding 18 months. I knew precisely what storm was heading our way. The acquisition playbook never varies. New management arrives, making reassuring promises about organizational stability and cultural continuity. Then they methodically eliminate anyone earning above $130,000 annually, replacing them with recent graduates, making 68,000 who lack sufficient experience to recognize they're being systematically exploited. The acquisition officially finalized on Valentine's Day, February 2025. The irony wasn't lost on anyone paying attention. The new management team arrived on February 22nd. Our new CEO was Ryan Mitchell, age 35, Yale MBA, previously an executive at a trendy startup that burned through $40 million in venture capital before collapsing spectacularly. He possessed absolutely zero practical experience in enterprise software operations, but brimmed with unwarranted confidence. The CFO was Marcus Bennett, 33 years old, formerly a senior consultant at a prestigious management consulting firm. Absolutely brilliant with financial modeling and Excel spreadsheets, but completely clueless about how actual businesses operated on a daily functional level. The new chief operating officer was Nathan Hayes, 37, who'd been a vice president at Empire Corporate for exactly 18 months. He genuinely believed he understood everything about software companies because he'd once managed one for 8 months before it failed catastrophically. They scheduled a mandatory company-wide meeting for March 3rd at 10 in the morning. Ryan stood in our main conference room, a space I'd personally designed when we relocated to this building back in 2013, selecting every piece of furniture, negotiating every equipment contract, even choosing the specific shade of charcoal gray paint for the walls, and delivered the standard corporate acquisition speech I'd heard, nearly word for word, from 3 other companies. "We're incredibly excited about this partnership," he announced with rehearsed enthusiasm that fooled absolutely nobody with real corporate experience. "Nothing fundamental is going to change here. We deeply value your contributions, and your positions are completely secure. Together, we're going to achieve unprecedented success." Empire acquired Summit specifically because of the exceptional talent assembled here, and we're fully committed to preserving that unique culture and expertise. I'd heard this identical speech before, delivered with the same hollow sincerity. When executives promise nothing will change, it invariably means everything is about to change dramatically and immediately. I began updating my resume that very evening at 10:23 p.m., sitting at my dining room table with a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon. But I also started doing something else, something my father had taught me during his 32 years as a construction foreman fighting tirelessly for workers' rights. I started documenting absolutely everything. Every single email exchange, every process document, every contract clause, every vendor agreement, every client relationship detail, every policy, every procedure, every conversation that seemed even remotely significant. I backed everything up to 3 separate, encrypted external hard drives that I kept securely at home, using military-grade encryption software recommended by a cybersecurity friend. I'd learned this crucial lesson from watching other companies get acquired and systematically gut their experienced staff. They terminate you immediately, lock you out of all systems within minutes, and suddenly you possess 0 proof of anything you accomplished and 0 leverage to negotiate reasonable terms. The termination started in March, exactly 4 weeks after the acquisition closed. On March 24th at 8:47 a.m., they fired 15 people, all over 42 years old, all earning more than $115,000 annually, all with multiple decades of valuable experience. They replaced them within 6 weeks with recent college graduates making less than half the salary. Human Resources called it organizational realignment. I called it systematic age discrimination and wage theft disguised with corporate euphemisms. But I kept my observations private and continued documenting every single termination, every replacement hire, every meeting where age or compensation was explicitly mentioned as a determining factor. I recorded everything with methodical precision. In April, they began targeting me specifically. Small things initially, subtle moves designed to undermine and marginalize. On April 9th, there was a quarterly strategic planning session I'd personally facilitated for 9 consecutive years. Suddenly, my calendar invitation vanished without explanation. When I asked Ryan directly about this conspicuous exclusion, he responded with casual dismissiveness that barely concealed his contempt. "Oh, we're bringing fresh perspectives to that process. We definitely appreciate your past contributions, though." On April 17th, they reassigned 4 of my primary responsibilities to a 27-year-old manager named Tyler Brooks, who'd been with the company for exactly 9 months. He possessed absolutely no understanding of our legacy systems or the complex, delicate vendor relationships I'd spent years carefully cultivating through trust and consistent performance. On May 8th, during a department-wide meeting with my entire team present, they openly questioned my decision-making abilities, blatantly implying I was out of touch with contemporary operational methodologies. Classic corporate intimidation tactics, deliberately designed to make me quit voluntarily so they wouldn't have to pay proper severance or face potential legal consequences. But I didn't quit. Instead, I documented every single instance, every excluded meeting, every reassigned responsibility, every public humiliation. I saved every email, recorded every conversation where legally permitted, maintained detailed written notes with precise timestamps and direct quotes. In June, they attempted something more aggressive and transparent. They announced a comprehensive departmental restructuring that would eliminate my position entirely while simultaneously creating a new role with remarkably similar responsibilities, but requiring someone with contemporary digital experience and innovative strategic thinking. Translation: they wanted someone younger who'd work for significantly less money. They posted the new position internally on June 15th. The job description was essentially my exact current role, rewritten with trendy business jargon and buzzwords clearly designed to exclude anyone over 35. The salary range topped out at $95,000, nearly half what I currently earned. I applied anyway, meticulously documenting the entire discriminatory process. On July 2nd, I received a generic rejection email stating I didn't meet the contemporary qualifications for this forward-thinking role. They hired a 29-year-old named Ethan Cooper with exactly 4 years of professional experience. His starting salary was $87,000. I documented every single aspect of that hiring decision with forensic detail. Throughout these months, I maintained absolutely impeccable professional performance. I arrived early, stayed late when necessary, exceeded every metric, completed every assignment flawlessly, and maintained positive relationships with clients and vendors who'd worked with me for years. I gave them absolutely zero legitimate grounds for termination with cause. By September, their frustration with me was becoming increasingly obvious and poorly concealed. I was still there, still performing excellently, still earning my full salary, and they couldn't figure out how to eliminate me without exposing themselves to obvious legal liability. That's when they decided to try forcing my hand with their resignation ultimatum. On Friday, October 10th, 2025, at 3:47 p.m., I received an urgent calendar invitation for a meeting scheduled to begin at 4:15 p.m. The subject line read, "Confidential discussion. Mandatory attendance." The attendees listed Ryan Mitchell, Marcus Bennett, Nathan Hayes, and Patricia Morrison, the Vice President of Human Resources. I knew immediately what was coming. I'd seen this exact scenario play out with 7 other longtime employees over the preceding months. I grabbed my laptop, made certain my phone was fully charged and set to record audio, and walked into that conference room at exactly 4:14 p.m. All 4 executives were already seated, arranged on one side of the polished conference table like a corporate firing squad. They deliberately positioned a single chair facing them, a transparent intimidation tactic straight from the management playbook. I sat down, opened my laptop to a blank document, and waited silently with my hands folded calmly in my lap. Ryan began with a rehearsed script I'd heard variations of before. "Jennifer, we appreciate your many years of service to Summit Technologies. However, we've made the difficult strategic decision that your role no longer aligns with our company's future direction. We're offering you the opportunity to resign voluntarily with dignity, effective immediately, rather than face involuntary termination." Marcus slid a single sheet of paper across the polished table. "We need you to sign this resignation letter. Right now." I picked up the paper and read it carefully, though I already knew exactly what it would say. Standard boilerplate corporate language. Immediate resignation, waiver of all claims, acceptance of 3-week severance, pay based on some arbitrary calculation that bore no relationship to my actual contract terms. 3 weeks pay after 21 years of dedicated service. I looked up at Ryan, maintaining absolute calm. "And if I decline to sign this? Then we'll terminate you for cause, effective immediately. You'll receive nothing, and we'll contest any unemployment benefits claim you file." "On what grounds would you terminate me for cause?" I asked, genuinely curious how far they'd push this transparent bluff. "Performance issues, failure to adapt to new organizational structures, inability to meet evolving operational standards. Ryan responded with practiced smoothness, as if he'd memorized the script in the mirror that morning. I see. Do you have documentation of these alleged performance issues? I asked calmly, already knowing the answer. We don't need to provide that documentation to you, Marcus interjected aggressively, clearly trying to intimidate me into submission. Actually, under Washington state employment law and my specific contract terms, you absolutely do, I replied evenly. But let's set that aside for the moment. You're offering me 30 minutes to decide whether to sign this resignation letter or be terminated immediately. Is that accurate? 28 minutes now, Nathan said with an arrogant smirk, checking his expensive watch with deliberate theatricality.
Fine.
I'll resign. But I'm writing my own resignation letter with my own specific wording. You can either accept my version, or you can terminate me and explain to a judge why you fired someone with 21 years of flawless performance reviews, no documented warnings, and clear evidence of age discrimination affecting dozens of employees. Your choice. The four of them exchanged uncertain glances. This obviously wasn't following their expected script. You have 15 minutes to write it, Ryan finally agreed, though his confidence was visibly wavering. I opened a new document and began typing. I took my time, carefully crafting each sentence with deliberate precision. At exactly 4:52 p.m., I printed the single-page letter on the conference room printer, signed it with a flourish, and handed it directly to Ryan. He scanned it quickly, looking visibly relieved that I'd apparently capitulated without further resistance. This is acceptable, he declared with renewed confidence, clearly believing he'd successfully intimidated me into submission. Your resignation is accepted, effective immediately. Patricia will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You have 20 minutes to clear out your workspace. Your access credentials will be deactivated at 5:30 p.m. I stood, closed my laptop with deliberate calm, and walked out without another word or backward glance. Patricia Morrison walked beside me in uncomfortable silence as we headed toward my office. She'd been with Summit for 12 years herself, long enough to know exactly what was happening, though she'd clearly chosen job security over moral integrity. I'm sorry it came to this, Jennifer, she offered quietly as we rode the elevator down to my floor. No, you're not, Patricia. You're just sorry you have to witness it, I replied without anger or bitterness, simply stating an observable fact. She didn't respond, which confirmed everything I needed to know. I spent exactly 18 minutes methodically packing my personal belongings into 2 boxes I'd conveniently brought from home that morning, because I'd known this day was inevitable. Family photos, a few cherished awards, some books, personal supplies. Everything else stayed. I didn't take any company documents. I didn't need to. I already had everything I needed safely stored on those encrypted drives at home, carefully organized and backed up. At 5:19 p.m., I carried my 2 boxes to my car, drove home through rush-hour traffic, opened a bottle of excellent wine, and called my attorney. Her name was Catherine Walsh, and she specialized in employment discrimination cases. I'd retain her back in April when the pattern became unmistakably clear. She'd been reviewing documents I'd been sending her for months, building our case methodically. Catherine, they did it. Forced resignation, exactly as we predicted. I have the entire confrontation recorded, and I wrote my resignation letter exactly as we discussed. Perfect. Don't contact them. Don't respond to any communication from them. Just wait. They'll figure it out soon enough, and when they do, they'll panic. That weekend, I didn't think about Summit Technologies once. I went hiking, visited my sister, read 2 novels I'd been meaning to finish for months, and slept better than I had in years. Monday morning, my work phone, which they'd apparently forgotten to deactivate, rang at 7:43 a.m. Marcus Bennett's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering, deliberately calm. Jennifer Richardson. Ms. Richardson, this is Marcus Bennett. We need to discuss some language in your resignation letter. What about it? I asked innocently, as if I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. There's some concerning conditional phrasing that our legal team has identified as potentially problematic. Oh, what specific language concerns you? He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. You wrote, and I quote, "I hereby resign my position as Senior Director of Global Operations at Summit Technologies, effective upon receipt of all compensation, benefits, bonuses, stock options, and severance payment to which I am entitled under my employment contract dated July 15th, 2004, as amended, and all applicable Washington state employment laws." Yes, that's what I wrote. Is something unclear? Ms. Richardson, that's a conditional resignation. You're essentially saying you'll resign once we pay you everything you're claiming you're owed.
Correct.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's not how this works. You resigned. Your resignation was accepted. No, Marcus. I submitted a conditional resignation, which you accepted without apparently reading it carefully. Under Washington state contract law, which I researched extensively before writing that letter, my resignation becomes effective only when the stated conditions are met. Until you fulfill those contractual obligations, I remain employed by Summit Technologies with full salary, benefits, and all associated rights. Silence. Complete, absolute silence for 11 full seconds. This is ridiculous, he finally sputtered. You can't. I absolutely can, and I did. Would you like me to explain the relevant case law? I have several precedents bookmarked. We accepted your resignation. You accepted a conditional resignation, Marcus. The conditions haven't been met, so the resignation hasn't become effective. This isn't complicated. It's basic contract law. I'm honestly surprised your legal team missed something this fundamental. Then again, I did give you only 15 minutes to review it, and you were all so eager to get rid of me that you didn't conduct proper due diligence. What do you think you're owed? He demanded, anger now replacing his earlier panic. Everything specified in my employment contract. Let me break it down for you, since you apparently haven't reviewed my actual contract. I'm entitled to 6 months base salary as severance. That's $96,000. I have 87 in used vacation days accumulated over 21 years. That's $51,273. I'm owed my Q4 bonus, which, based on my division's performance metrics, should be approximately $48,000. I have vested stock options worth approximately $342,000 at current valuation. I'm owed reimbursement for business expenses I've covered personally over the past 6 months, roughly $12,000 with proper documentation. That's a total of approximately $549,273. Actually, I knew the exact figure down to the cent, but I was giving him the rounded numbers to see how he'd respond. That's completely unreasonable. No, Marcus, that's what my contract stipulates. What's unreasonable is trying to force me out with 3 weeks' pay after 21 years of exemplary service, which, by the way, violates Washington state's age discrimination statutes. But we can discuss that aspect separately if you'd like. You're not getting $500,000 for signing a piece of paper. Then I don't resign, and I remain employed. I'll show up at the office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp. You've reassigned all my responsibilities to other people, so I'll basically be getting paid to sit at my desk doing nothing while I continue documenting evidence for my age discrimination lawsuit. I can do that indefinitely. Your choice, Marcus. More silence. I need to consult with our attorneys, he finally managed. Of course. Take your time. But just so you're aware, every day I remain technically employed, that's another $738 in salary, plus benefits. The meter's running. He hung up without another word. I poured myself coffee and returned to the novel I'd been reading. Catherine had predicted this would take at least a week to resolve. She was wrong. It took 4 days. That Monday, they locked me out of all company systems, email, internal networks, databases, everything. That was their first major tactical error. By locking out someone who is still technically employed under a conditional resignation, they'd potentially violated my employment contract and created additional legal exposure. Catherine filed a complaint with the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries that same afternoon, documenting the lockout and requesting immediate investigation of age discrimination claims. Tuesday morning at 9:17 a.m., my personal phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Ms. Richardson, this is David Cooper from Empire Corporate Holdings Legal Department. I've been assigned to handle your situation with Summit Technologies. I'm listening, Mr. Cooper. We've reviewed your employment contract and your resignation letter. Our position is that you voluntarily resigned, and any claims regarding additional compensation should be addressed through separate negotiation. That's an interesting interpretation, Mr. Cooper, but it's legally incorrect. I submitted a conditional resignation that was accepted. The resignation becomes effective when the conditions are met. Until then, I remain employed. If you'd like to terminate me instead, that's certainly your right, but then we're discussing wrongful termination in addition to age discrimination. Your choice. Ms. Richardson, I don't think you understand the resources Empire Corporate Holdings can bring to bear in litigation. Mr. Cooper, I don't think you understand how Washington state employment law works, or how expensive it becomes when major corporations systematically discriminate against experienced employees. But I'm happy to let a judge explain it to you. Should I have my attorney contact you directly, or would you prefer to continue attempting to intimidate me personally? He hung up. Apparently, nobody at Empire Corporate Holdings appreciated having their intimidation tactics called out directly. Wednesday afternoon, my email access mysteriously reactivated. Someone in IT had panicked and restored it, probably after a lawyer explained they could face serious additional legal problems for maintaining the lockout. I logged in and immediately found an email thread between Ryan Mitchell, Marcus Bennett, Nathan Hayes, David Cooper, and 4 additional Empire corporate attorneys that had been inadvertently copied to my still active email address. The subject line read, Urgent, Richardson Resignation Issue, Legal Exposure Analysis. They'd forwarded my resignation letter to 6 different employment law firms for independent evaluation. All 6 responses contain variations of the same assessment. Conditional resignation is legally valid and enforceable. Extremely expensive mistake. She's correct about everything. One attorney's response was particularly satisfying to read. You accepted a conditional resignation without recognizing the conditional language. She's absolutely correct about her contractual entitlements, the bonus, the options, the severance, all of it. You're legally obligated for the full amount unless you want to litigate, which opens you up to significantly larger damages for age discrimination and wrongful termination. My strong recommendation is immediate settlement with full payment of all contractual obligations. I printed that email thread and added it to my growing documentation file. Thursday morning, Catherine received a formal settlement offer via certified mail. Empire Corporate Holdings offered $450,000 as full and final settlement of all claims, known or unknown. We both laughed. They were still trying to lowball me by nearly $100,000. Catherine drafted a response rejecting the offer and outlining in excruciating detail every contractual obligation they owed, including daily interest accumulation and her own attorney fees, which were now substantial. Friday afternoon, David Cooper called me again at 4:27 p.m. Ms. Richardson, Empire Corporate is prepared to offer you a revised settlement of $600,000, representing a fair resolution of this matter. Still not close enough, Mr. Cooper. My contract entitles me to $549,273 minimum, plus my attorney's fees, which as of this morning totals $63,450, plus punitive damages for attempting to defraud me of contractual benefits, plus potential emotional distress damages. We're now looking at somewhere between $750,000 and $800,000, depending on how much longer you drag this out. Ms. Richardson, you're being completely unreasonable. No, Mr. Cooper, I'm being extremely reasonable. I'm requesting exactly what my contract explicitly entitles me to. You're the ones who tried to force me out with $11,000 after 21 years of dedicated service. That wasn't reasonable. That was attempted theft. $700,000. Final offer. Take it or we'll see you in court.
See you in court then.
Catherine has already prepared the lawsuit. Age discrimination, breach of contract, wrongful termination, fraud. We'll file Monday morning. Discovery should be fascinating. I have 21 years of internal records, including that lovely email chain where your attorneys admitted you made an expensive mistake. I'm sure that'll play well before a jury. Silence for 18 seconds. I need to consult with my clients, he finally said, voice tight with barely suppressed frustration. Of course. But Mr. Cooper, you should be aware that every single day this drags on costs Empire an additional $738 in my daily salary plus benefits, plus accumulating interest on the unpaid balance. And once we file suit, that settlement number jumps substantially to include litigation costs, punitive damages, and significantly higher attorney fees. The price goes up the longer you wait.
Considerably.
He didn't respond, just hung up. Monday, October 28th, Catherine's phone rang at 8:13 a.m. David Cooper, proposing a meeting to discuss resolution parameters. They met Tuesday afternoon. Catherine called me immediately afterward, barely containing her satisfaction. They've agreed to everything. Full contractual payment, $549,273. All attorney fees to date. A formal letter of recommendation from Ryan Mitchell on company letterhead. Mutual non-disparagement agreement. And they're throwing in an additional $50,000 designated as emotional distress compensation to make this go away quickly. When do I get paid? I asked, because that was the only question that truly mattered. Wire transfer within 20 business days. They're terrified you'll change your mind. I want everything in writing, fully executed, before my resignation becomes effective.
Already insisted on that.
They agreed immediately. Jennifer, you just negotiated a $649,273 severance package from a company that tried to push you out with 3 weeks' pay. That's approximately 60 times what they initially offered.
Good.
I earned every single dollar of it. On November 18th, 2025, at 2:47 p.m., I received a wire transfer for $649,273, the complete settlement amount in one lump sum. That same afternoon, FedEx delivered a formal letter of recommendation on Empire Corporate Holdings letterhead, signed by Ryan Mitchell, praising my 21 years of exemplary service, operational excellence, and invaluable contributions to Summit Technologies' success. I seriously doubt he personally wrote a single word of it, but his signature was legally binding. Catherine reviewed the final settlement agreement, all 63 pages of dense legal language. Standard release provisions, mutual non-disparagement clauses, confidentiality terms regarding settlement specifics. Everything looked proper and enforceable. I signed it on November 20th. My conditional resignation officially became final and effective on November 22nd, 2025, at 11:34 a.m. I was no longer an employee of Summit Technologies. I'd successfully negotiated a settlement worth nearly 60 times their initial insulting offer. The epilogue is deeply, profoundly satisfying. Ryan Mitchell lasted exactly 7 more months at Summit before being fired in June 2026 for missing quarterly revenue targets by 34%. Turns out that systematically eliminating all your experienced employees and replacing them with people who genuinely don't understand how anything works doesn't actually improve operational efficiency. Who could have possibly predicted that outcome? Marcus Bennett quit in May 2026, citing irreconcilable differences with corporate leadership philosophy in his resignation letter. The irony of him submitting a resignation letter wasn't lost on me. I genuinely hoped he wrote his with more care than they'd read mine. Nathan Hayes remains at Summit as of this writing, managing a company that's hemorrhaging major clients because nobody currently employed there remembers how to maintain the legacy systems, who the critical vendor contacts are, or why certain essential processes exist in their specific configurations. 4 of my former team members have contacted me for advice after receiving similar forced resignation ultimatums. I've connected all of them with Catherine Walsh. 3 have successfully negotiated 6-figure settlements ranging from $200,000 to $450,000. The 4th is still technically employed while the company calculates exactly how expensive it will actually be to pay her what they contractually owe. As for me, I'm semi-retired at 46 years old, living quite comfortably on my settlement and investments. I do occasional consulting work for medium-sized companies, charging $575 per hour, helping them with operational optimization and process improvement strategies. But my true specialty has evolved into something far more meaningful: career defense planning. I help experienced employees document everything properly, truly understand their employment contracts beyond superficial reading, and protect themselves legally when management attempts to force them out through intimidation tactics. I've been contacted by 19 different people over the past year, all facing remarkably similar situations, all being systematically pushed out by companies that view experienced employees as expensive liabilities rather than valuable organizational assets. I teach them what my father taught me decades ago: know your rights thoroughly. Document absolutely everything. Never let people in expensive suits bully you simply because they have impressive titles and corporate authority. The lesson here isn't about being vindictive or greedy. It's about understanding fundamental value. When you work somewhere for 21 years, when you build complex systems and nurture relationships and accumulate institutional knowledge that can't be easily replaced, you have genuine value. And when a company tries to discard that value for pennies on the dollar through coercion and intimidation, you have every legal and moral right to demand exactly what you're contractually owed. Never sign anything without reading it at least 3 times, preferably with an attorney reviewing it. Never assume corporate executives are smarter than you simply because they project confidence. They're often just better dressed and more practiced at sounding authoritative. Never underestimate someone with decades of experience and access to competent legal counsel who actually understands employment law. And always, always know exactly what your employment contract actually says. Not what you think it says based on verbal promises. Not what someone in HR casually told you it says. What it actually legally, enforceably says in clear written language. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even through petty actions. It's getting exactly, precisely what you're legally owed, and watching them realize far too late that they should have simply treated you with the basic respect and fairness you deserved all along.